Welcome back to your daily dose of camera content. Today, I want to talk about the SIRUI Saturn anamorphic lenses for full frame cameras. But before we get started, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and consider joining the channel. Channel members get exclusive access to Filmmaker Alchemy, behind the scenes lessons and insights on the business of video production. Learn how to turn your content into gold. So these are nothing new. They've been around for quite a while. They're not the fastest anamorphics. These are only f2.9, but when you're thinking of full frame lenses and speed and aperture and all that stuff, honestly, yeah, 1.4 is nice, 1.8 is nice, 1.2 is nice in certain situations. But there's a lot of times where you don't want that super shallow depth of field, especially when you're dealing with anamorphics. And for the size, the weight, these are really nice, and especially the price. That's why I wanted to talk about them. I actually picked them up because they're on sale right now. I don't know if they're clearing out inventory, making room for new autofocus anamorphics or something like that. That would be pretty sweet. That's what I'd love to see. That's one of my maybe biggest complaints about these, is that they're just not autofocusing, although that's not something we've had in anamorphic lenses until really recent. There are some autofocusing anamorphics, but from my knowledge, they're only the 1.33x. These are special because they're 1.6x. I have them for L mount, and that's what I would recommend you get them in, because L mount, if you're familiar with Lumix, allows you to shoot open gate. If you're getting E mounts or anything like that, the open gate options are going to be far more limited. And with something like a 1.6x anamorphic, you really need to start with a taller aspect ratio, 3:2 or 4:3 if you're shooting anamorphic. 16:9 is fine for delivery. It's certainly a standard for TVs and computer monitors and even theaters to some degree. But for anamorphics, it's not good as the acquisition, because your final result ends up getting super stretched out. And I should say, I'm really not going to be talking a lot about footage or even showing you shots from these. I just got them relatively recently, so I don't have a bunch to show you. And even if I did, I don't know how that's helpful, because that's already out there. There's a ton of marketing material showing you what these can deliver when it comes to your footage. And I would say all of that lives up to expectations. The footage itself looks quite nice. I want to talk more about who these are for, why you might want to get them, and why you might not want to get them. They're really, I think, just for fun. You could potentially use these on paid work for professional gigs. But at the end of the day, there's so many trade-offs, I would say compromises, in terms of the anamorphic aesthetic nowadays, that it just really isn't always worth it at the end of the day to shoot anamorphic. Starting with that ultra wide aspect ratio is super limiting, especially if you're also delivering social media vertical content. If you know me, I like to use open gate so I can shoot horizontal and vertical at the same time. I've made a bunch of videos talking about that. The anamorphic aesthetic is really for your own creative projects for fun. Maybe it's for YouTube, maybe it's a passion project, something you're working on, a short film, music video, documentary. I don't know, whatever it is, that's what I would apply these to. I think the price point right now around that $600 mark is a lot more attractive than what these once were, which is upwards of $1,000 per lens. That's super expensive for something that's just for fun, just for play, just for a hobby, or for a creative project. I would save that money for, more useful, versatile lenses that are going to give you autofocus, they're going to give you those faster apertures when you need them. However, if you do want to play around with anamorphic lenses, I think these are the ones I would recommend. I love the size, I love the weight, I love the price, and I like the performance that I get out of them. It's single focusing. Back in the day when we were messing around with anamorphics, maybe 10 or so, even more years ago, we were kind of hacking adapters together. You'd have two different focusing mechanisms. It was super slow, big, bulky, clunky setups, and still kind of expensive. If you want to scratch that anamorphic itch, this is probably your best bet, because it doesn't take up that much space. The price point is right, and it does the job. I think on a 3:2 aspect ratio sensor, your final video aspect ratio, once you de-squeeze it, will be 2.4 to 1, which is exactly what you want for anamorphics. Again, why I would stay away from anything 16:9 with these in particular. If you're shooting 16:9, you're going to have to go with like a 1.33x anamorphic, which in that case, you're not going to get as much of the anamorphic aesthetic anyway, because you're really not squeezing all that much. 1.33, okay. 1.6 and upwards, certainly up to 2x anamorphics. That's really where you get those characteristics, where you get those effects. And, there's going to be people out there who will say they don't like this because of whatever effect, the pin cushion, the distortion, whatever, barrel, who knows. I think if you're after the anamorphic aesthetic, this is a really good, easy place to start. If you're fine with manual focus and you're just willing to, have an ultra wide aspect ratio for your content. Most people nowadays have some kind of social media delivery, which is why I tend to stay away from anamorphic. Starting extra wide doesn't make vertical cropping any easier. So having a more neutral starting point tends to be my preference for paid work, professional work, any type of content that needs to go kind of everywhere. This is really what I would reserve for those special one-of-a-kind projects that you really want to kind of, put your own creative touch or spin on. And again, just mostly for fun. So if you have the budget, if you have the freedom to spend a couple $100, I got the 35 and the 75 millimeter set because the 50 didn't really seem to have a good place in between. I normally like 2 cameras, 2 lenses, a wide and a close-up. So I went with the 35 and the 75, and those have suited me very nicely. 2.9 is plenty fast on the aperture. I don't need it shallower than that. Manually focusing, it does have the gear wheel if you need to, rig it up that way to a follow focus or whatever. You can certainly manual focus on your own. But it is a compromise in today's world where so much relies on autofocus and it being really good and rock solid. It's funny, for as far as cameras have come with phase detect and face tracking and subject tracking and all this cool AI autofocusing features, to then, intentionally put a lens on there that's manual focus only kind of defeats some of the selling points of these modern cameras. But that's probably a topic for a different video. If you're interested in anamorphic, I do think this is probably the best place to start. If you're shooting L mount, you have a camera that can shoot open gate. They're tiny, they're compact. When I opened the box, I was surprised. I was delighted with how small they were. And using them, you can certainly go all day. They're not big, they're not heavy, they're not clunky. All those issues I would associate with anamorphic lenses. They're big, they're bulky, and they're expensive. This has none of those. So that's why I picked up 2 of them. You can certainly go for the full set of all 3 if you really want to. It is a good price right now, all things considered. Or you can just wait because I'm sure there'll be more anamorphics coming. It seems to be kind of the new zeitgeist for whatever reason. There's a lot of anamorphic lenses now, which is funny because there's not a lot of open gate cameras. So do with that what you will. Maybe it's just a untapped market, I guess. I do like these. I think they're actually great value, and scratch that anamorphic itch if it's something, you kind of want to pursue again for your creative, fun, passion project type stuff. If you have a client that is looking for anamorphic, you could probably just get away with renting, maybe these or even something better, because I'm sure, these are more affordable. So if you want to spend a little bit more, you can maybe get something a little bit better, more premium. That's probably how I'd treat it. I would, again, I just don't see where these fit in like a professional use case, but maybe I'm missing something. Let me know in the comments if you see a reason why someone would ask for these particularly. Maybe if you specialized in like anamorphic weddings or something like that. But even then, I don't know how many people are willing to pay for that aesthetic if it means sacrificing something on social media, because it's all one and the same nowadays. Horizontal, vertical, it's all just content. So I would not apply it to everything. If you want to shoot anamorphic, do it with purpose, be precise, have a reason for doing it. If you don't have a good reason, probably just stick with spherical, get the benefits of autofocus, stabilization, some of those other more modern features. Probably a better use for if you have a few dollars, only a few dollars to spare, get a more regular spherical lens. But if you have some, room in your budget to play around with a little bit and you want something that's a little bit more creative, you can certainly get these. And I like that there's a 1.6x. That's a really nice squeeze, de-squeeze, however you want to look at it, squeeze ratio. One thing I'll say, it's kind of goofy on the Lumix cameras. They don't have a 1.6x de-squeeze option. It's 1.5 is the closest you get. So monitoring is another tricky part about it. It's not always obvious what the better choice is. The Lumix cameras can de-squeeze internally, but they can't, at least from all my playing around, they can't de-squeeze the HDMI signal. So you do need a monitor to do that for you. But then if you're trying to monitor with information, your display on, that gets de-squeezed as well. And that can be kind of goofy. So I think the best solution on Lumix is to monitor on the LCD, do the de-squeeze internally. All your crop marks and frame markers and all that stuff stays true, and it accommodates that. But it will be a 1.5 that you're viewing, not quite the 1.6, but it is close enough for monitoring purposes. And then just know in post-production, you're going to shrink it by the 1.6, whatever the math works out to. I always have to do it every time I open up my calculator. So, okay, 1.6. Okay, what am I doing? What does my new vertical need to be? So you can take it from there and play around, have fun. I'm just still scratching the surface with these, trying out some fun new stuff. So sorry if you came here looking for footage. It's out there. You can certainly find it. I just wanted to share my opinion and perspective on why you might want these or not want them. I think I've addressed that hopefully at this point, but if you have questions, please leave a comment and I'll be happy to answer.